Captain Lee Tae-ho walked through the dirty spaceport marketplace with heavy steps. His boots made clicking sounds on the metal floor as he counted his last few credits for the 10th time today. The numbers had not changed since this morning. He still had barely enough money to buy a cup of coffee, let alone a spaceship. 3 weeks ago, his life had been completely different. He was the cargo master aboard the merchant vessel Golden Dragon. They carried supplies between the outer colonies and made good money doing honest work. The crew was like family to him, and Captain Park treated him with respect. Then everything went wrong during what should have been a routine hyperspace jump. Tae-ho still remembered the terrible sound when the hyperdrive exploded. The ship shook like it was being torn apart. Metal screamed and alarms blared as emergency lights flashed red. The Golden Dragon died in space and took half the crew with it. Tae-ho was lucky to escape in a life pod before the ship broke into pieces. The insurance company gave him a small payout for his personal belongings, but it was not nearly enough to start over. Most of the money went to food and lodging on Kepler Station while he looked for work. Every shipping company wanted experienced crew, but none of them wanted to hire someone whose last ship had exploded. Even though it was not his fault, the accident followed him like a dark cloud. For 2 weeks he had knocked on doors and filled out applications. Every morning, he would dress in his best clothes and visit the respectable shipping offices. Every afternoon, he would return to his tiny room with another rejection letter. The station was expensive and his credits were disappearing fast. Soon he would not even have enough money for basic food. That was when desperation led him to the black market section of the spaceport, down here in the lower levels. The lights were dimmer and the air smelled of engine oil and unwashed bodies. This was where people came when they had no other choices. The legitimate businesses would not serve customers like him. The ship dealers here were not like the clean professionals in the upper levels. These men and women had scars and missing teeth. They sold vessels that other people would call junk, but junk was all Tae-ho could afford now. He had been walking through the maze of makeshift stalls for an hour when he saw it. The ship sat in a corner of the docking bay like a forgotten toy. It was small and battered, with rust stains covering most of the hull. Several panels were missing and the landing gear looked ready to collapse. But it was a real spaceship, and the price tag said it was within his budget. The Stellar Wind, according to the faded letters on its side, though half of them had fallen off. The ship was old, maybe 30 years or more. It had the basic shape of a cargo hauler, but someone had modified it over the years, adding new components and removing others until it looked like a mechanical patchwork. A shipbroker approached him before he could examine it too closely. The alien had green skin and too many sharp teeth in his wide mouth. His clothes were expensive but dirty, and his eyes never stopped moving, as if he was always looking for the next deal. "Welcome, friend," he said in accented standard. "You have excellent taste. The Stellar Wind is a fine vessel, very reliable, very fast. Perfect for someone starting a new business." Tae-ho walked around the ship slowly, looking for obvious problems. The hull had dents and scratches, but no major holes. The engines were an older model, but they appeared to be in working condition. The cargo bay was smaller than he would have preferred, but it was clean and empty. "What is wrong with it?" he asked. The broker looked hurt by the question. "Wrong? Nothing is wrong. It is a wonderful ship. The previous owner took very good care of it. He just needed to sell quickly for personal reasons." That was always the story with black market ships. The previous owner had to sell quickly. No one ever explained why someone would sell a perfectly good ship for half its value. Tae-ho had heard enough lies in his life to recognize another one, but he also knew he had no choice. The broker led him inside to show off the living quarters. The ship had a small cabin with a bed and basic furniture. The kitchen was tiny but functional. There was even a small bathroom with a sonic shower. It was not luxurious, but it was clean and private. The control room was cramped, but all the important systems seemed to be working. The navigation computer was an old model, but it still functioned. The communications array looked newer than the rest of the ship. Someone had upgraded it recently. In the engine room, Tae-ho found what he was looking for. The power core was stable, and the hyperspace drive showed no signs of damage. The life support systems were basic but adequate for a crew of 1 or 2 people. Everything he needed to start working as an independent cargo hauler. "How much?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from the price tag. The broker smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. For you, my friend, a special price, only 50,000 credits, and the ship is yours today. No questions asked, no credit checks. No waiting period. 50,000 credits was exactly what Taeho had left after paying for 3 weeks of food and lodging. It was too convenient to be a coincidence. The broker had probably been watching him and knew exactly how much money he had. But Taeho was past caring about coincidences. He needed this ship to restart his life. Without it, he would be stuck on Kepler Station until his money ran out. Then he would have to find work as a station laborer, or worse, within a year he would be another desperate person living in the lower levels, and selling his possessions to survive. The paperwork took less than an hour. The broker was eager to complete the sale and kept urging Taeho to sign faster. He produced all the necessary documents, including ownership transfer and registration papers. Everything looked legitimate, though Taeho noticed the previous owner had signed with an illegible scrawl. Soon as the credits transferred to his account, the broker grabbed his payment tablet and started walking away. Wait, Taeho called after him. What about the ship manual or maintenance records? The broker was already disappearing into the crowd. Sorry, friend, no time for that. Everything you need is in the computer system. Good luck with your new business. Taeho stood alone next to his new ship, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. He was now the owner of a real spaceship, which meant he could start taking cargo contracts again, but he was also completely broke, and the ship was clearly hiding some secrets. That night he made his bed in the small cabin and tried to sleep in his new home. The ship made strange noises as it settled. Metal creaked and engines hummed in the distance. He told himself these were normal sounds that every ship made. Around midnight he heard something different, a scratching sound coming from somewhere below his cabin. At first he thought it might be rats or some other pest that had gotten aboard, but the sound continued and seemed to be coming from the cargo hold. He grabbed a plasma torch and went to investigate. The cargo bay was empty, just as it had been during his inspection. But the scratching continued, and now he could hear something else, a soft, whimpering sound like someone crying following the sound. He found a section of wall that looked different from the rest. The metal panel was slightly newer and had different bolts holding it in place. His hands shook as he removed the bolts and pulled the panel away. Behind the false wall was a small room he had not seen before, and in that room was a cryogenic pod with frost covering its transparent window. Inside the pod he could see a small figure with frozen tears on her cheeks. Taeho stared at the sleeping child and realized his used spaceship had come with a secret passenger. Taeho stared at the cryogenic pod for several minutes, trying to understand what he was seeing. The small figure inside looked like a child, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Her black hair floated around her face, and her skin had the pale blue tint that came from long-term cold sleep. His first thought was to contact station security, but something stopped him. The ship broker had been too eager to sell and too quick to disappear. This was clearly not a normal situation. If he called the authorities, they would ask questions he could not answer and probably take both the ship and the child away from him instead. He studied the pod controls carefully. The display showed that the occupant was stable and the sleep cycle was almost complete. Someone had programmed it to wake up soon, which meant this was not an accident. The child was supposed to be found. He activated the awakening sequence and stepped back as the pod began to warm up. Frost melted from the window and the humming sound grew louder. After 10 minutes, the lid opened with a soft hiss, and the child inside began to stir. Park So-young opened her eyes, slowly blinking in the bright light. She felt cold and confused, like waking up from a very long dream. Her body ached and her throat was dry. The man looking down at her had kind eyes, but she did not recognize him. Where am I? She asked in a small voice that cracked from disuse. You are safe, Taeho said gently, helping her sit up. You are on a ship called the Stellar Wind. My name is Lee. Taeho, can you tell me your name? So-young, she whispered. My name is Park So-young. I think I was sleeping for a long time. He wrapped her in warm blankets and carried her to the small kitchen where he made hot soup and tea. She drank slowly. At first, then more eagerly, as her body remembered how to be hungry. The warm food helped clear her head, but her memories were still fuzzy. I was playing in the garden, she said, between sips of soup. There were flowers everywhere, and the sun was warm. My parents were working in their laboratory, like always. They said they were making something important. What kind of work did your parents do? Taeho asked carefully. They were scientists, she said, but her forehead wrinkled as she tried to remember. More, they studied stars and space and how to travel faster. I think they were trying to help people go to new places while. So Young rested. Taeho searched the ship computer for any information about his unexpected passenger. What he found made his blood run cold. Hidden deep in the system were encrypted files labeled Project Starlight. The names Dr. Park Jin-woo and Dr. Lee Mi-young appeared repeatedly along with government contract numbers and security clearances. Most of the files were locked behind passwords he did not know, but one text document was accessible. It contained a brief message that made everything clear. If you're reading this, then something has happened to us. Please take care of our daughter So Young. She is innocent and does not understand what we have discovered. Keep her safe from those who would use her for their own purposes. The future of humanity may depend on Taeho deleted the message immediately and cleared the computer logs. Someone had killed So Young parents and hidden her in this ship. The broker had probably been paid to sell the vessel to the first buyer who could afford it. Now he was responsible for a child whose parents had died protecting some kind of secret. He found So Young curled up on the small bed, looking lost and scared. The cryogenic sleep had affected her memory, leaving gaps in her past. She remembered fragments of her life, but not the danger that had forced her parents to hide her. The ship communication system suddenly crackled to life with an incoming message. This is Captain Han of the Federal Security Bureau. You are ordered to prepare for boarding and inspection. Do not attempt to flee through the viewport. Taeho could see 3 sleek military ships approaching fast. Their black hulls gleamed in the station lights and their weapon systems were already powering up. These were not customs inspectors or routine patrol vessels. They were warships designed for serious combat. So Young appeared in the doorway, clutching her blanket. Why are there so many ships? She asked. I do not know yet, Taeho said, but we need to leave right now. He ran to the control room and began the emergency startup sequence. The stellar wind engines waned as they came online, but the ship was still connected to the station power grid and docking clamps. He needed 30 seconds to complete the undocking process. The first laser blast hit the docking bay wall just meters from his ship. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the station as people ran for cover. The military ships were not waiting for him to surrender. They were shooting first and asking questions. So Young screamed as the ship lurched free from the docking clamps. Taeho threw the engines to full power and aimed for the nearest exit. The old ship groaned under the stress but held together. The military vessels were faster, but they had not expected him to run so quickly. Why are they shooting at us? So Young asked, holding tight to her sea tie. Think they want to take you back to wherever you came from, Taeho replied as he steered between other ships in the busy traffic lanes. But I will not let that happen. The chase continued through the asteroid field outside Kepler Station. The military ships were better armed, but Taeho knew how to use the old freighter advantages. He flew close to the spinning rocks, using them as shields while the larger ships had to keep their distance. One of the military vessels got too close while trying to cut him off. Taeho fired his mining laser directly into their engine intake. The explosion sent them spinning away, disabled but not destroyed. He did not want to kill anyone, but he would defend So Young with his life if necessary. After an hour of running and hiding, the military ships finally gave up the chase. Taeho found a safe spot behind a large asteroid and shut down all non-essential systems. The ship went dark and quiet while they waited to see if their pursuers would return. So Young had been very brave during the chase, but now she was crying. I want my parents, she said. I want to go home. Taeho knelt beside her and took her small hands in his. I know you do, he said softly, but your parents sent you away because they loved you. They wanted you to be safe. Am I in trouble? She asked. Are those people going to hurt me? Not while I am here. Taeho promised. I will protect you no matter what happens. As they sat together in the dark ship, Taeho realized his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a cargo hauler trying to make a living. He was now the guardian of a little girl whose parents had died protecting some kind of secret, and there were powerful people who wanted that secret badly enough to kill for it. The stars looked different now through the viewport. They were no longer just destinations for cargo runs. They were hiding places and escape routes in a galaxy that had suddenly become very dangerous. But he had made a promise to protect So Young, and he intended to keep it whatever Project Starlight was, and whoever wanted it, they would have to go through him first. 3 days after escaping Kepler Station, Tejo thought they were safe. He had found a quiet trade route near the outer colonies where few military ships patrolled. The stellar wind was running smoothly, and So Young was starting to smile again. She had even helped him organize the small cargo hold and learned how to make simple repairs. Then the nightmares began. So Young would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, talking about explosions and people in black uniforms. She remembered fragments of her parents' laboratory and the terrible night. When everything went wrong, the cryogenic sleep had protected her memories, but now they were slowly returning. Tejo would hold her until she stopped shaking and tell her stories about the stars and planets he had visited. He taught her how to read the navigation charts and showed her how the ship systems worked. Keeping her mind busy seemed to help with the bad dreams. On the 4th day, everything changed again. Without warning, while they were docked at a small mining station buying supplies, 3 corporate security ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began scanning every vessel in the area. These were not military ships, but private forces working for one of the big corporations. Tejo recognized the ships from his cargo hauling days. Day and Industries used vessels just like these to protect their trade routes and hunt down pirates. But what was a corporate security team doing way out here in the middle of nowhere? He got his answer when the lead ship broadcast a message on all frequencies. We are looking for a stolen child and the criminal who took her. There is a reward of 1,000,000 credits for information leading to their capture. 1,000,000 credits was enough money to buy a small fleet of ships. Every person on the mining station would be looking for them now. The corporate security team was smart. They knew that greed would turn everyone into bounty hunters. Tejo grabbed So Young and ran back to their ship, but it was too late. The station security chief was already waiting for them with 2 armed guards. The man's eyes were bright with greed as he looked at the little girl. This must be the stolen child, he said, reaching for So Young, but she stepped behind Tejo and refused to move. She is not stolen, Tejo said quietly. She is under my protection. The security chief laughed. Your protection, 1,000,000 credits, says otherwise. The fight was quick and brutal. Tejo had learned hand-to-hand combat during his years working dangerous cargo routes. The security guards were bigger, but they were also slower and overconfident. Within minutes, all 3 men were unconscious on the ground, but the noise had attracted attention. Other people were running toward the docking bay, and Tejo could hear them shouting about the reward money. He and So Young had to leave immediately before the entire station turned against them. The stellar wind lifted off just as the corporate security ships arrived. The old freighter shook and rattled as Tejo pushed the engines harder than ever before laser fire lit up the space around them, but the ship held together. So Young sat in the co-pilot seat watching the battle with wide eyes. She was scared, but also fascinated by the way Tejo flew the ship. He moved like a dancer, spinning and diving between the enemy vessels while their shots missed by inches. One of the corporate ships tried to cut them off by flying directly into their path. It was a dangerous move that could have killed everyone involved, but Tejo was ready for it. He fired the mining laser at exactly the right moment, hitting the enemy ship engine core. The explosion was beautiful and terrible. At the same time, the corporate ship spun away, trailing fire and debris. The other 2 ships backed off, realizing they were dealing with someone who knew how to fight, but the victory was temporary. More ships would come, and next time they would be ready for his tricks. Tejo needed to find allies or better weapons if he wanted to keep So Young safe while hiding in an abandoned star system. He accessed more of the hidden files on the ship computer. What he found made him understand why so many people were chasing them. Project Starlight was not just another government research program, it was something that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Dr. Park Jin-woo and Dr. Lee Mi-young had been working on a new type of faster-than-light travel that could make the journey between star systems almost instantaneous instead of taking weeks or months to travel between worlds. Ships could make the trip in hours or even minutes, but the technology had a dark side. The same energy that could power interstellar travel could also be used as a weapon. A single ship equipped with a starlight drive could destroy entire planets by creating artificial black holes or tearing apart the fabric of space itself, the scientists had realized. Their discovery was too dangerous to share with anyone. They had tried to destroy their research, but someone had found out about the project before they could finish. Corporate spies or government agents had broken into their laboratory and killed. Theme So Young was the key to everything. Her parents had hidden the final calculations in her memory, using a special technique that would protect the information even if she was captured. The knowledge was locked away in her mind, waiting for the right person to unlock it. Now Taeho understood why so many people wanted her. The corporations saw her as a way to gain unlimited power. The military wanted the technology for national defense, and the criminals just wanted to sell her to the highest bidder. But they had made one mistake in their greed. They had underestimated the bond between a man and the child he had sworn to protect. Taeho was not just running away anymore, he was preparing to fight back. He spent the next few days studying the ship systems and planning his next move. The Stellar Wind was old, but it had been modified by someone who understood combat. The previous owner had added extra armor and hidden weapon systems that were not mentioned in the official record. So Young helped him explore the ship and find all the secret compartments. They discovered spare parts, emergency supplies, and even a small armory filled with military-grade weapons. Someone had turned the old freighter into a disguised warship. The most important discovery was a message left by the previous owner. It was addressed to whoever found the child and contained coordinates for a safe house on a distant planet. There were also contact codes for a rebel group that opposed the corporations and their endless hunger for power. As they prepared to leave their hiding place, Taeho looked at So Young and saw something new in her eyes. The scared little girl was still there, but she was also becoming something else. She was becoming a fighter, just like him. The stars ahead of them were full of danger, but they were also full of hope. Somewhere out there were people who would help them fight against the corporations and protect the secret that could change everything. Taeho set course for the coordinates in the message and prepared for the next phase of their journey. The chase was just beginning, but now they had a destination and a purpose. They were no longer just running away, they were running towards something better. The mining world of Titan 7 looked like a giant piece of rusted metal floating in space. Its surface was covered with deep holes where machines had dug for precious metals. The air was thick with dust and the smell of burning fuel, but it was also one of the few places where corporate security rarely visited. Taeho landed the Stellar Wind in a crowded spaceport where dozens of other old ships were getting repairs. His friend Kim Dong-woo owned a small workshop in the industrial district. They had served together on cargo ships years ago, and Dong-woo was one of the few people he trusted completely. The workshop was hidden behind stacks of scrap metal and broken machinery. Dong-woo had always been good with his hands and could fix anything that flew through space. He was also smart enough to ask no questions when friends needed help. When Taeho walked into the workshop carrying So Young, Dong-woo took one look at them and immediately understood something serious was happening. The little girl was trying to be brave, but her eyes showed the fear of someone who had seen too much violence. You look like you have been through hell, my friend, Dong-woo said as he led them to a safe room in the back of the workshop. What kind of trouble are you in? The worst kind, Taeho replied. There are people who want to hurt her, and they have enough money to buy an army. Dong-woo knelt down to So Young level and smiled gently. What is your name, little one? Park So Young, she said in a small voice. Are you going to help? You see, I'm going to try, he said, then looked at Taeho. We need to talk privately. While So Young played with some harmless machine parts, Dong-woo and Taeho went to another room where they could speak freely. Taeho told him everything about finding the child and discovering the secret files. About Project Starlight. Dong-woo listened without interrupting, but his face grew more serious with each detail. When the story was finished, he was quiet for a long time. I have been hearing rumors, he said finally. Corporate mercenaries have been asking questions about a missing child. They are offering huge rewards and threatening anyone who does not cooperate. How many people know about us? Taeho asked. Too many. The story is spreading through the underground networks. Everyone knows there is a 1 million credit bounty on your heads. Dong-woo began working on the Stellar Wind immediately. He reinforced the hull plating and upgraded the weapon systems. The old mining laser was replaced with a proper military-grade plasma cannon. Hidden missile launchers were installed in the cargo bay. This ship was already modified for combat, he said as he worked. The previous owner knew what he was doing. Someone spent a lot of money turning this freighter into a warship. While the repairs continued, So Young had more nightmares about the night her parents died. She would wake up crying and talking about laboratories and explosions. The memories were becoming clearer, but they were also more painful. Tae-ho held her during these episodes and tried to comfort her, but he knew the trauma would take a long time to heal. Her parents had died protecting her, and now she was alone in a galaxy full of enemies. On the third day, their peace was shattered when corporate security forces arrived on Titan 7. The ships landed at the main spaceport, and teams of armed mercenaries began searching every workshop and warehouse. They were moving systematically through the industrial district. Dong-woo cursed as he watched them through his security cameras. They are not taking any chances this time. They brought an entire battalion. We need to leave now, Tae-ho said, but Dong-woo shook his head. The ship is not ready yet. I need 6 more hours to finish the weapon calibration. If you leave now, you will be defenseless against their next attack. The mercenaries were getting closer. They had already searched half the district, and it was only a matter of time before they reached the workshop. So Young could hear the sound of their vehicles, and she was becoming more frightened by the minute. Then unexpected help arrived. A group of rebels led by a former military officer named Choi Min-ho had been tracking the same corporate forces. The rebels had been fighting against the big corporations for years, trying to protect ordinary people from their greed and violence. Min-ho and his team attacked the mercenaries just as they reached Dongwoo workshop. The battle was fierce and loud, with laser fire lighting up the dusty air. The rebels were outnumbered, but they fought with the desperation of people who had nothing left to lose. Tae-ho wanted to help, but Dong-woo held him back. Your job is to protect the girl, he said. Let the rebels handle this. The fighting continued for 2 hours before the corporate forces finally retreated. They had lost too many men and gained nothing. Min-ho team had suffered casualties too, but they had won the battle. When the rebels entered the workshop, Min-ho looked at So Young with recognition in his eyes. This is the child everyone is looking for, he said. She's the key to Project Starlight. Tae-ho stepped protectively in front of So Young. How do you know about that? Because we have been investigating the same conspiracy that killed her parents, Min-ho replied. The corporations have been stealing government research and using it to build weapons. We know what her parents discovered. Min-ho explained that his rebel group had been formed by former military officers who were disgusted by the corruption in the government and the power of the corporations. They had been fighting a secret war for years, trying to expose the truth. The corporations are not just after money anymore, he said. They want to control space travel itself. If they get the Starlight technology, they will be able to dominate every trade route in the galaxy. Tae-ho was suspicious of the rebels. He had learned not to trust anyone who claimed to be helping. The galaxy was full of people who would say anything to get what they wanted, but Min-ho proved his sincerity during another attack. Later that night, more corporate forces arrived with heavier weapons and better tactics. The rebels fought beside Tae-ho and Dong-woo to protect the workshop during the battle. Min-ho threw himself in front of a plasma bolt that was aimed at So Young. The shot hit him in the shoulder, and he fell to the ground bleeding. The rebels' leader had risked his life to save a child he barely knew, while Tae-ho treated Min-ho wound. The rebel leader explained more about Project Starlight. The technology was not just about faster travel. It could also be used to create defensive shields around entire planets, or destroy enemy fleets from across the galaxy. Your parents were good people, Min-ho said to So Young. They realized their discovery was too dangerous to share with anyone, so they hid the information in the one place no one would think to look. Where? So Young asked. In your memory, he replied. The final calculations are locked in your mind, waiting for the right person to unlock them safely. The rebels offered to help them reach a safe planet where scientists could extract the information without harming So Young, but Tae-ho was still not sure he could trust them. I made a promise to protect her, he said. That means I decide who gets access to the information. Min-ho nodded with respect. That is exactly what her parents would have wanted. Someone who cares more about her safety than about power or money. As dawn broke over Titan 7, the corporate forces retreated again, but everyone knew they would return with even more ships and weapons. The rebels had bought them time, but not safety. The Stellar Wind was finally ready to fly with its new weapons and armor. Dongwu had done excellent work, and the old ship was now a formidable opponent, but they needed more than just firepower to win this war. They needed allies and information, and most importantly, they needed to find a way to protect So Young while unlocking the secrets in her memory. The rebels claimed they could help, but trusting them was a risk that could cost So Young her life. As they prepared to leave Titan 7, Taeho looked at his small family, his old friend Dongwu, the wounded rebel leader, Minho, and the brave little girl who carried the future of humanity in her memories. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but they were no longer alone in their fight. The rebel base was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the outer rim, where corporate ships rarely traveled. Dr. Han Yujin had been working there for 3 years, studying the human brain and developing new ways to recover lost memories. She was the only person Minho trusted to safely extract the information from So Young mind. The laboratory was small but filled with advanced medical equipment. Yujin had been a military doctor before joining the rebels, and she understood the importance of their mission. If the corporations got the Starlight technology, they would use it to enslave entire star system. So Young was nervous about the procedure, but she was also curious about what her parents had hidden in her memory. She had been having more dreams about the laboratory, and the night everything went wrong, the memories were becoming clearer, but they were also more frightening. Taeho held her hand as Yujin explained what would happen. The process was called neural archaeology, and it involved using special machines to carefully dig through layers of memory without causing damage. It will not hurt, Yujin promised, but you might see things that are scary. Your parents hid the information very deep to protect it from people who might try to steal it. The procedure began with So Young lying on a comfortable bed while Yujin attached small devices to her head. The machines could read the electrical patterns in her brain and translate them into images and sounds that everyone could see. At first, the memories were happy ones. So Young playing in the garden with her parents working in their laboratory. Her mother Lee Myung was gentle and kind, while her father Park Jinwoo was serious but loving. They were good people who cared about making the galaxy a better place. Then the memories became darker. Corporate spies had been watching the family for months, learning their routines and looking for weaknesses. The parents knew they were in danger, but they thought they had more time to complete their research. The night everything changed started like any other evening. The family was having dinner together when armed men broke down their doors. So Young remembered her mother screaming and her father trying to protect them with a plasma pistol. The attackers wore black uniforms with no identifying marks, but So Young could see their faces clearly now. The leader was a woman with cold eyes and a cruel smile. She ordered her men to search the laboratory while she questioned the parents. Where are the final calculations? The woman demanded. We know you have completed the Starlight Research DR Park. Jinwoo tried to lie, but the woman was too smart. She had been monitoring their work and knew they were close to a breakthrough. Her men began destroying the laboratory, looking for hidden data storage devices. Dr. Lee Mi-young made a desperate choice. While the attackers were distracted, she activated the secret protocol that would transfer all the research data into So Young memory. The little girl felt a strange tingling in her head as thousands of equations and formulas were uploaded into her brain. The corporate agent realized what was happening and tried to stop the transfer, but it was too late. The information was already locked away using a special encryption that would protect it from anyone who tried to steal it. In rage, the agent ordered her men to kill the parents. So Young watched in horror as plasma bolts struck her mother and father. They fell to the ground holding each other and whispering final words of love, but the agent made a mistake in her anger. She thought the research was lost forever and did not realize that So Young now carried all the information in her memory. The little girl was unconscious from the data transfer and appeared to be in shock. The attackers left her for dead, but her parents had planned for this possibility. A hidden program activated the emergency protocol that put So Young in the cryogenic pod and programmed the ship to take her to safety. As the memories flooded back, So Young screamed with pain and grief. She relived the worst night of her life and felt the loss of her parents all over again. Taeho held her tight and whispered words of comfort while Yujin monitored her vital signs, but Mixed with the trauma were the technical specifications her parents had hidden. The equations for faster-than-light travel appeared in her mind along with detailed blueprints for the starlight. Drive the information was incredibly complex, but Eugen machines could record and analyze everything. After 3 hours, the procedure was complete. So Young was exhausted, but the information had been successfully recovered. Eugen stared at the data in amazement, realizing she was looking at technology that could change the course of human civilization. "This is incredible," she said to Taeho and Minho. "Your parents were geniuses so young. They figured out how to fold space and time itself." But as Eugen studied the data more carefully, she discovered a problem. The information was incomplete. Her parents had been smart enough to split the research into several parts and hide them in different locations. The data in So Young memory was only about 60% of the complete technology. The rest was scattered across the galaxy in secret research stations and hidden laboratories to build a working starlight drive. They would need to collect all the missing pieces. Minho cursed when he heard this. The corporations will be looking for the same information if they find the other research sites. First, they could still complete the technology. So Young was slowly recovering from the memory extraction, but she was different now. The procedure had unlocked not just the hidden research, but also all her suppressed memories of her parents. She remembered their love and their sacrifice, and she was determined to honor their memory. "I know where the other research sites are," she said, in a voice that was stronger than before. "My parents told me stories about their work, and I remember the places they mentioned." She drew a map from memory showing the locations of 3 secret facilities where her parents had hidden backup copies of their research. The sites were scattered across the galaxy in dangerous regions where few people traveled. The first location was an abandoned research station in the cracked nebula where alien scavengers had been stripping the facility for valuable materials. The second was hidden on a dead planet in the neutral zone where pirates and smugglers operated without interference. The third and most dangerous location was on Earth itself in the ruins of Old Sol, where her parents had maintained a secret laboratory. Nobody would think to look for advanced technology in the bombed-out remains of the ancient city. Minho assembled a team of his best fighters while Eugen prepared portable equipment to analyze any data they found. Taeho wanted to keep So Young safe at the rebel base, but she refused to be left behind. "This is my parents' work," she said firmly. "I need to help finish what they started." The journey to collect the missing research would take them across the galaxy into some of the most dangerous regions of space. Corporate forces would be following them every step of the way, and there were other enemies who wanted the technology for their own purposes, but they had advantages too. The rebels had fast ships and experienced fighters. Eugen was a brilliant scientist who could understand the complex research, and So Young memory contained clues that would help them find the hidden data. Most importantly, they had something the corporations did not have. They had a reason to fight that was bigger than money or power. They were fighting for the future of humanity and for the memory of 2 brave scientists who had died protecting their discovery. As they prepared to leave the rebel base, Taeho looked at So Young and saw that she was no longer the frightened child he had found in the cryogenic pod. She was becoming something new, a young woman who carried the hopes and dreams of her parents. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but they had a mission now. They were going to complete Project Starlight and make sure the technology was used to help people instead of enslaving them. The first destination was the abandoned research station in the cracked nebula, where alien scavengers and automated defenses waited for anyone brave enough to enter. Their real journey was just beginning. The abandoned research station in the cracked nebula had been a nightmare of alien scavengers and malfunctioning defense systems, but they had recovered the first piece of missing data. The dead planet in the neutral zone had been even worse, with pirates and radiation storms that nearly killed them all, but they had found the second piece. Now they stood at the edge of the solar system looking at Earth through the viewport of the stellar wind. Humanity homeworld looked peaceful from this distance, but So Young knew it was heavily guarded by corporate security forces and government warships. The final piece of Project Starlight was hidden in the ruins of Old Sol, in a secret laboratory that her parents had built beneath the ancient subway tunnels. It was the most dangerous location of all because every major power in the galaxy would be waiting for them. Tae-ho had changed during their journey across the galaxy. He was no longer just a cargo hauler trying to protect one little girl. He had become the leader of a small but determined group of rebels who were fighting for the future of humanity. So Young had changed to the frightened child who had awakened from cryogenic sleep was now a young woman who understood the importance of her parents' work. She carried their legacy in her memory, and their courage in her heart. Minho and his rebels had proven themselves to be true allies during the dangerous missions to collect the missing research they had fought beside Tae-ho. And So Young through every battle and never asked for anything in return except the chance to stop the corporations. Dr. Yujin had been analyzing the data they had recovered, and her excitement grew with each new discovery. The Starlight technology was even more advanced than anyone had imagined. It could not only enable faster than light travel, but also create defensive shields around entire planets. The complete technology includes a planetary protection system, Yujin explained to the group. If we can activate it, Earth will be safe from any attack. The corporations will never be able to threaten humanity homeworld again, but first they had to get past the massive fleet of ships that surrounded Earth. Corporate security forces, government warships, and even alien mercenaries had all gathered to stop them from reaching the surface. The battle for Earth began as soon as they entered the outer system. Corporate dreadnoughts opened fire with plasma cannons while government interceptors tried to box them in. The stellar wind dodged and weaved through the enemy fire using every trick Tae-ho had learned during months of running and fighting. Minho rebel ships provided covering fire as they made their desperate run toward the planet. Surface-to-space missiles launched from military bases, while orbital defense platforms added their weapons to the barrage. The space around Earth became a deadly light show of laser fire and explosions. So Young sat in the co-pilot seat watching the battle with calm determination. She was no longer afraid of the violence because she understood what they were fighting for. Her parents had died to protect this technology, and she would not let their sacrifice be meaningless. The stellar wind broke through the orbital defenses and entered Earth atmosphere. Corporate fighter ships followed them down, trying to destroy the old freighter before it could reach the surface. But Tae-ho was flying better than he ever had before, pushing the ship to its limits. They crash-landed in the ruins of Old Seoul, where ancient skyscrapers stood like broken teeth against the sky. The city had been abandoned for decades after the resource wars, but the underground tunnels were still intact. So Young led them through the maze of subway tunnels using memories her parents had shared with her. The laboratory was hidden behind a false wall in one of the deepest stations, where no one would think to look for advanced technology. The corporate security forces were not far behind. Armed teams rappelled down from their ships and began searching the ruins systematically. They had tracked the stellar wind crash site and knew their quarry was somewhere in the underground tunnels. The hidden laboratory was exactly as So Young remembered from her parents' descriptions. Banks of computers lined the walls while holographic displays showed complex equations and star maps. Her parents had spent years building this place and filling it with their research. Yujin immediately began connecting her equipment to the laboratory computers while Minho and his rebels set up defensive positions at the tunnel entrances. The corporate forces would find them soon, and the final battle would be fought in the place where Project Starlight had begun. The first attack came from three directions as corporate commandos tried to overwhelm the rebel positions. The fighting was brutal in the narrow tunnels with plasma fire lighting up the darkness. Minho fell wounded, but kept fighting while his soldiers held the line. More enemies poured into the underground complex. Government black ops teams, alien mercenaries, and corporate assassins all converging on the same location. The laboratory became the center of a three-way battle as different factions fought each other for control. Tae-ho fought desperately to protect So Young and Yujin while they worked to complete the final upload. The scientist's fingers flew over the computer controls as she integrated the missing data with the information from So Young memory. Almost there, she shouted over the sound of gunfire. Just a few more minutes, but they were running out of time. The defensive positions were being overrun and enemy soldiers were getting closer to the laboratory. So Young made a decision that would change everything. She stepped away from the computers and activated her parents' final program. The complete Starlight technology included not just the faster-than-light drive, but also the planetary defense system that could protect Earth from any attack. The laboratory filled with brilliant light as the defense grid came online. Ancient satellites hidden in Earth orbit suddenly activated, creating an impenetrable energy shield around the planet. Every corporate ship in the system was pushed away by the defensive field, the enemy soldiers in the ton.